Hi, and thanks for being with us on this edition of NECA Newscast. I'm Tom Green. Today on the newscast, we'll talk to you about some new safety regulations that will be affecting NECA contractors in the coming year. We'll meet NECA's new Director of Education and hear how she plans to transform MEI into NECA Education, and meet with the Electrical Contractor magazine publisher, John Maisel, to get a closer look at the makings of the July edition special feature, the 2014 profile of the Electrical Contractor. It starts right now. Wes Wheeler is NECA's new Director of Safety, and he sat down with us recently to discuss some changes to the Regs for Osha and Nfpa 70E requirements.
One of the latest revisions that Osha has published is the revisions to 1910-269 and 1926 subpart V, which affects the electrical transmission and distribution contractors that were the members of our association. The original regulations were written in 1970, and one of the things that haven't been published that long, the technologies that have emerged since then have had a great effect on our contractors. Some of these revisions that Osha has put forth brings in line some of the incident energy calculations that are now being required to be estimated by the contractor, so they'll know exactly what kind of hazard the workers are going to be exposed to in the field. The other thing that this revision has done is brought in line some of the fall protection requirements as far as the full body harnesses and the restrictions to limit any of the free falls from the linemen to a 2-foot maximum when they're ascending or descending one of the poles. By the end of the year, the contractors are going to have to be able to perform an incident energy calculation estimate, so they'll know what the energy is that their workers are going to be exposed to, and they have to have that completed and in place by January 1, 2015. The fall protection requirements, they have to be fully implemented by April the 15th of 2015. Going to have to be implemented by April of 2015 for the personal protective equipment, the clothing that they have to be able to wear, along with the training that's going to have to be completed for those workers that are going to be exposed to these hazards. Recently, Nfpa is currently revising the 70E standard, and it'll be the 2015 edition. And in that revision, they're going to be actually changing some of the nomenclatures that we've actually become familiar with. Stuff that has been referred to as hazard risk categories in the past are now going to be referred to as PPE categories.
In addition to those new regulations on fall protection and incident energy calculations, Osha has published an update to their silica rules that NECA contractors have taken issue with.
The proposal to lower the PEL from 250 micrograms down to 50 micrograms in construction and 100 micrograms down to 50 micrograms in general industry is just infeasible because of the fact that you can't get down to that level and have anybody working without very restrictive or respiratory protection. And when you're putting an employee in respiratory protection, then you have to follow other guidelines in the OSHA standards in order to meet those requirements.
In order to help our member contractors meet safety and regulatory requirements, NECA has come up with 2 new apps that you can use to stay safe while in the field.
NECA has put forth a Ppe Selector App. NECA has many of their guides that they've developed over the years for Nfpa 70E, for energized versus de-energized, for the contractor's responsibilities associated with 70E, which is just came out this month. But the Ppe Selector was meant to have that person in the field be able to pull it up on a smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android device, something that they can look at and also be able to communicate that with the customers they're doing work with. NECA is also going to be releasing a safety meeting app. In conjunction with safety meeting app developers, they actually have a NECA version now that's going to be made available to the NECA contractors around the country. And what this is going to do is going to give the ability for the centralized company to have a record electronically of everything that's going on in the field.
NECA also has a new Director of Education. Her name is Stephanie Adamec, and she comes to NECA from similar positions in trade organizations within the construction industry, bringing with her a wealth of experience and change. One of her first tasks was to try to consolidate NECA's MEI, or Management Education Institute, to bring it back within the NECA brand.
A lot of the pieces related to the change were just simplicity and clarity for a lot of people. With Management Education Institute, the idea that it was a separate organization or separate from NECA came across a lot, or the idea that you needed to apply to take courses, or you needed to be really traditional management. You needed to be managing a person to be involved in the program. And that was really never what the courses were. They were very inclusive for people in the industry.
She's hoping to launch a series of new initiatives for the education of NECA members and their employees.
So I actually think the biggest program that we're getting ready to release actually at the end of May is our basic foremanship class. And this is a big deal for us because it's our first blended learning course. Participants will start off taking online modules in which they'll really get the lecture component. They'll find out about job site mobilization and what the foreman's role is there, and project closeout and documentation and HR matters, and how they really navigate that as they're moving into a foreman role. And then from there, they'll be able to go into these in-seat or in-class or maybe web-based, depending on how it's organized locally, discussion groups.
As for the future,
I'm hoping to work more with other organizations to make sure that we're really getting a good information flow back and forth, so people are able to kind of go seamlessly through their careers and through their roles.
Finally, today we meet with Electrical Contractor magazine's John Maisel to ask about the biannual report in the July edition of the magazine.
The profile of the electrical contractor is unique to our industry. Piece of, I have to say, massive market research that's been going on for over 50 years, conducted by the magazine, by Electrical Contractor. It really gives us, from the magazine's point of view, an editorial guideline so that we can better serve the needs of our members and of our readers. We use it for our contractor partners to give them some idea of what their peers are doing.
Maisel talked about some of the highlights of the findings from this year's edition.
For the first time in 6 years, because I'm just going back to 2010, 2012, 2014, the bleeding seems to have stopped in terms of size of firm. And this is important for most everybody. In 2010, the number of firms that said that they had added or increased the size of their firm was about 7%. In 2012, it was about 10 or 11%. This time, it's 20% of contractor firms said that they had actually increased the size of the firm. Areas that continue to show increased activity by our community are in the areas of low voltage systems, and integration of systems, also energy services, energy conservation, maintenance and services continues to be approximately 40% of the revenue of the typical firm. Companies establishing separate, either a person or a department for business development, which I know is very important to us at NECA, but it's also important to the industry. Roughly 12% of firms actually had a specific department or division working on low voltage systems work. We do know that this is an increase, and it's a trend when we talk about futures.
So what does this mean for trends in the electrical contracting industry?
One of the major trends that we see that's important to every player in the industry is the changing role of the electrical contractor themselves, both the role and the scope of activity. The contractor as a group has migrated from traditionally being perceived as a buyer an installer of electrical products and systems of all kinds and shapes, this kind of thing. They have migrated, they still do that. Obviously that's their bread and butter, but the role has changed for a number of different reasons.
In the end, it all points to a more optimistic 2014 and 2015 for our industry.
This gives us a roadmap, at least a direction. Can we forecast? No, we're really not in that business. However, trends are trends, and there's some exciting trends that are taking place that bode very well for the electrical contractor and the industry and the suppliers to it.
Thanks to Mr. Maisel for taking some time to sit down with us and talk about this edition. And thank you for watching this edition of NECA Newscast. Until next time, I'm Tom Green.